I'm investigative reporter Danny Freeman.
And I'm investigative reporter Claudia Vargas. Part of our commitment to you is telling stories that impact our communities.
That's right, and our first stories take us over 1,000 miles away from Philadelphia as we track how police map crime. Philadelphia is struggling with certain types of crime these days. Homicides, shootings, and carjackings are all on the rise. But we wanted to know more. We examined crime data for the past 6 years in Philadelphia. Nearly 1 million entries from aggravated assaults to car thefts. But after looking at the numbers, we found something out of place. So we decided to track it down. Never thought I'd travel this far for a Philly crime story. And it took a plane, a cab, and a train to see it for ourselves. There is one place that has recorded more Philadelphia crime than any other spot in the city, and that place is Disney World. The happiest place on earth, somehow the most dangerous place for Philadelphia crime. Haven't seen one Philly police officer yet. The NBC 10 investigators found that for years, when the police made a typo or couldn't get an accurate location for a crime, the department moved the crime to Disney World. The theme park became a dumping ground for inaccurate data, which led to more than 5,000 Philadelphia crimes in the past 6 years plotted here in Fantasyland. No other location had more recorded Philadelphia crime. Since 2016, just past Cinderella's castle, Philadelphia police have recorded at least 16 arsons, 133 DUIs, 298 auto thefts, and 50 homicides, including the murder of Shanika Crawford's son.
The pain never goes away and never gets better. You just have to learn how to live with it.
North Philadelphia's Shanika Crawford lost her son, Shaquille Barbour, to gun violence last year. He was shot more than a dozen times and his killer has not been caught. But because police recorded the address of the shooting as 1700 North 68th Street instead of 1700 68th Avenue, Shaquille's murder was moved to Disney World. What goes through your mind when you hear that?
It's hurtful. He got murdered on the street in Philadelphia.
How do you think crime victims or family members of crime victims might feel if they knew that their worst moments were mapped at Disney World?
Well, I can't really speak to how another person might think or feel. I'm not aware of that. So as far as we're concerned, this was an innocuous location that we chose.
Kevin Thomas is the director of research and analysis for the Philadelphia Police Department. He said the choice to map these crimes at Disney was made more than a decade ago, before he got into the position.
In no way was this meant to be in any way humorous, or it was just an innocuous location chosen within the U.S. that would obviously not have anything to do with Philadelphia whatsoever.
It conveys the wrong message that a police department doesn't really care.
Robert Kane leads Drexel University's Criminology and Justice Studies. He explained it's not uncommon for police departments to have to deal with inaccurate crime data. But it is uncommon to choose a default location like Disney World. The industry standard is to pick a spot in the middle of the ocean.
I don't think you would want your crime or a crime committed against somebody close to you kind of minimized by the very agency that's supposed to be investigating and trying to make it right.
Thomas with the police noted of the millions of crimes reported for more than 10 years, only 2% were mapped in Fantasyland. But 5 months after the NBC 10 investigators started asking about this years-long practice, something changed. The Disney data disappeared.
After you had requested a discussion about this, we've actually gone through a process of changing that.
The bad data has been removed from Disney and relocated in the Atlantic Ocean. The happiest place on Earth, no longer a hotspot for Philadelphia crime. So the Philadelphia Police Department did move those crimes to the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, but we wondered, why not just fix the problem and correct the actual data? Well, we went through several of the homicides to see how hard it would be to find out where they actually happened. Then we took that information to the police. When she cooks dinner each night, Shanika Crawford remembers how her son Shaquille would surprise her.
He could be very quiet and sneak up behind me and he'll grab me and hug me and start kissing me and shaking me. But he just loved to make people laugh.
Shaquille was murdered last year in West Oak Lane. He He was shot more than a dozen times.
I wake up and go to sleep with the sight of him on the ground.
Shaquille was killed here on 68th Avenue. But according to Philadelphia police records, the shooting did not happen on that street. Never thought I'd travel this far for a Philly crime story. A few months ago, the NBC 10 investigators discovered when police made a typo or couldn't get an accurate location for a crime, the department moved the crime to Disney World. We found thousands of crimes plotted to Fantasyland, including Shaquille's homicide. After our reporting, police changed the policy, which had been in place for more than a decade. Inaccurate data is now mapped in the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Africa, which is an industry standard. But is plotting crimes in the middle of the ocean really the best thing to do? Why not just fix the bad data? We took a look at homicides over the past 6 years that had been mapped incorrectly. There were fewer than 100. Many just had typos. In Shaquille's case, the killing happened on 1768th Avenue, not 1768th Street, as was recorded. In the end, we were able to correct locations for 40 homicides. So why can't police? Why not just fix that underlying data?
So, first of all, it would be, if we were to fix every single crime, every single police interaction, or every single record, we would be talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of records a year.
Kevin Thomas is the director of research and analysis for the Philadelphia Police Department. He emphasized this mapping issue does not impact PPD's ability to solve crimes and noted only 2% of Philly's crime data have errors. We discovered it was about 1,000 cases per year.
If we want perfect data, right, it's going to cost time. And that's the same time that could have been utilized to create more tools and more apps to speed up investigations.
Despite that, Thomas says after our first story, police leadership decided to manually fix some of the data.
We are actually going through the shooting database to actually do just what you're talking about right now.
We checked, and it's true. Over the past few weeks, the department has corrected several homicide locations between 2019 and 2022, including Shaquille's killing last year. Philadelphia City Council member Curtis Jones wants to see more done.
You owe it to the citizens that pay their taxes, you owe it to the victims of crime to come back and swing back around and say, let's correct it and not do the easy thing, which is send it off to the coast of Africa.
Jones is the chair of the council's Public Safety Committee, which oversees the police department. He worries not fixing the data could lead to missed crime patterns or misplaced police resources.
And we need to deploy through budget a person that goes back around and checks and double checks when we have that 2% inaccuracy so that we can get as close to 100% accuracy as possible.
Now, I spoke with Shanika to let her know that her son's murder location was finally fixed after our stories. She was very appreciative, but of course she still hopes that her son's killer is caught. We'll continue checking in on Philly's crime data and the progress the department makes when it comes to fixing those entries and of course how it handles future crime locations.
Coming up, a federal loophole that lets people skip the public housing line.
Locked down, schools face more and more external and internal threats, but are they doing the drills to prepare students?
Welcome back to the NBC 10 investigators digging deeper. Philly residents are waiting more than a decade for public or subsidized housing, and that's if they were lucky enough to get on a wait list years ago. But our investigation found that people are avoiding the long wait by moving out west and coming back in as little as a few months.
They told me it would be up to 8 to 15 years.
That's how long Leticia Riley says the Philadelphia Housing Authority told her it would be before she can get into a public housing unit. And forget about getting a housing choice voucher, also known as Section 8.
Our housing choice voucher program is currently closed.
Section 8 homes are privately owned with the Housing Authority paying the rent. The waitlist for those has been closed since 2010. But the NBC 10 investigators found that since 2017, 715 families have been able to get Section 8 housing in Philly using a loophole. It's a federal program called Portability. The program allows people to transfer their housing voucher from one public housing agency to another, anywhere in the country. To help explain it, we have to take you to Johnstown, Pennsylvania, an old steel town just east of Pittsburgh. That's where where we meet Zenzi Wallace Bay. She says she first tried getting into public housing in Philly, where she's from.
I was on the waiting list for almost like 8 years.
Oh, wow.
So it was taking very long. Whereas here, I was on there for only 2 months.
Once she became a Johnstown resident in the city's public housing, she got priority for a Section 8 voucher.
To get housing in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia is much more populated, has a much longer wait list.
Mike Alberts is the head of the Johnstown Housing Authority. He says the Johnstown agency doesn't have a residency requirement for public housing, so people from Philly and other cities can get in. Some Philly residents will move into Johnstown public housing, but with another goal in mind.
And once they've established residency, then they qualify for that preference to get a Section 8 voucher quicker.
The wait for a housing voucher in Cambria County is usually a couple of months. So they come here to Johnstown in western Pennsylvania, stay for as little as a few months, pick up their Section 8 voucher, and then they port back to Philly and move into Section 8 housing without having to wait on PHA's list. The practice is allowed under the Federal Housing Choice Voucher Program. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development sets the rules for the transfer. Officials there say it gives people a choice of where to live.
That's how it works, and there's nothing that we can do to change that.
715 people used the program to get into Philly between 2017 and 2021. And 95 of those are from Johnstown, the most of any town or city. They got to skip that line.
Right. And part of that, I think, is on Philadelphia, where they're absorbing these residents into their program instead of pulling from their own waiting list.
Philly's housing authority could build the other housing authority where a voucher holder moved from in order to cover that person's rent. Or PHA can absorb it, paying for it from its own budget.
Those 715 vouchers have not been absorbed, nor will they be.
PHA Director Kelvin Jeremiah said his agency would not pay for the vouchers coming in from other jurisdictions because of his agency's long wait list. They're saying the opposite, that you guys are absorbing them.
Absolutely not. So if we had, I'm assuming you're referring to the portability data.
That is what we're referring to. Data obtained through a public records request shows PHA is paying $10.4 million in rent annually for the families who transferred their vouchers to Philly between 2017 and 2021. After our interview with Jeremiah, a PHA spokesperson confirmed in an email that the agency has been paying for the transferred vouchers, including 58 new vouchers so far in 2022. Leticia Riley says she may just put in a housing application in Johnstown.
I kind of don't want to travel that far, but it's seeming like I'm going to have to because I can't wait 8 to 15 years to get a place.
The head of the Johnstown Public Housing tells us Philadelphia Housing Authority is now billing Johnstown for people moving to Philly. And it's not just people coming here. We found that dozens of people are leaving Philly for places across the country, including one woman who was set up to live in Paradise. With stacks of boxes packed up, Tamikai Palmer said goodbye to her home for the last decade, West Park Apartments in West Philly.
I've accepted that change is coming.
The public housing complex is planned for redevelopment, and the 200 plus tenants had to be relocated.
Many of them moved to other PHA sites.
The head of the housing authority, Kelvin Jeremiah, says a few dozen residents like Tamika took the option instead of getting a voucher for the housing choice program known as Section 8. That voucher allows a person to find their own place to rent at a government subsidized rate.
They can do so anywhere in the continental United States, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands.
Philly's Section 8 waitlist, however, has not taken any new applicants since 2010. PHA made an exception for the West Park residents since they were being displaced by the agency. Tamikai took the offer, landing in Hawaii in late June.
Welcome to my humble abode.
Moving from one city to another using a housing voucher is called porting. The NBC 10 investigators found that porting allows people to bypass waitlists in other cities they move to. For example, at the time Tamikai moved to Honolulu, the public housing agency had more than 900 people on its waitlist for Section 8.
It can be years, and that's problematic.
Anton Krupke is the director of the Honolulu Department of Community Services, which manages the housing voucher program. He says if someone like Tamikai ports in with a voucher already in hand, there's no wait.
So they're already qualified with that voucher. We may have to put it in our budget, or we may have that public housing authority do it from their end.
In Tamikai's case, Philly Housing Authority records show Honolulu took over her rent payments.
Hawaii has absorbed the total cost of the rent and the utilities. Amen.
That's $2,000 a month, she says. By Honolulu paying her rent, they're choosing to pay for her voucher instead of taking someone off their wait list. And for Philly, it means they have one more voucher to give someone on its 2,100 person long wait list. You see, every housing agency throughout the country gets a certain number of vouchers, and when one family moves from one city to another, the question is who pays for that voucher? And that decision can have unintended consequences for people on Section 8 wait lists. According to records obtained through a public records request, Philly's Housing Authority is paying more than $1 million annually for 78 families to live outside of the city, including Florida, Ohio, and California.
It's something that the program frankly encourages. We want families to decide where they want to live.
If the housing authorities and other locations were to pick up the tab like Honolulu did, then Philly could move 78 other families off its wait list.
Every one of our vouchers, there is a huge demand.
For most of the 450 people who have ported out of Philly since 2017, the receiving agency has picked up the tab.
It's very beautiful.
Tamikai moved into a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment. It includes a mountain view and it's close to the ocean.
Very quiet, subtle, and full of wildlife, full of birds that are just foreign, that I've never heard.
These reports now have some Pennsylvania state legislators wanting a say into who gets into public housing. Our request for a follow-up interview with the head of the Philadelphia Housing Authority was declined. But a spokeswoman for the agency sent us a statement that says, in part, PHA will not participate in any prerogative narrative aimed at stigmatizing the population it serves.
Coming up, the impacts of school lockdowns on learning.
And what happens if schools don't do the state-mandated lockdown drills? Welcome back to the NBC 10 investigators digging deeper.
Now, shootings and homicides have occurred at a record pace over the past 2 years in Philadelphia, and a lot of them happened during the day, which has led to school lockdowns. Well, we want to know how the frequency of those school lockdowns are impacting the youngest members of our community. Little AJ here is a happy kindergartner at Edward Gideon School in Brewerytown. But when his mom, Jessica Bloom, gets a text or a call saying AJ's school is on lockdown,
it's panicking. You're scared. You don't know what to do. How can I help my child? What do I do?
But even after the lockdown ends, the concern for AJ remains.
The distraction, it's hard to pick it back up after that happens. So, yeah, I think it does affect the school. I think it affects the children, it affects the school, the parent.
Through a public records request, the NBC 10 investigators obtained records showing just how many lockdowns Philly schools have faced from 2018 to September 2022. The total, 342. Gideon alone saw 6. But lockdowns have happened across the district. In the 2 years after the pandemic closures, 64 district schools experienced at least one lockdown. More than a dozen had more than one. The reasons range from gunshots and police activity nearby to fights and intruders in the schools. But the records show the 2021-2022 school year had fewer overall lockdowns than pre-pandemic years.
If you're a school right now in 2022, you're probably going to face a lockdown situation. It's just a question of how severe it's going to be.
Amy Klinger is the co-founder of the Educators School Safety Network, a nonprofit that researches school safety. She explained frequent lockdowns can be traumatic for students.
Consumes a lot of resources. It interrupts instructional time. You've got lots of chaos, lots of media attention, lots of parent anxiety.
But Klinger argues lockdowns don't have to be disruptive if schools have plans.
Because the anxiety comes from, I don't know what to do. I don't know. No one knows what they're doing. That's where anxiety comes from.
We do believe the trauma of these lockdowns are significant.
Kevin Bethel is the chief safety executive for the school district of Philadelphia. He explained in recent years, the district has changed how it executes lockdowns specifically to avoid anxiety and learning interruption. Now there are 3 tiers. A hold status means students can continue learning. They're just kept in classrooms during an emergency in the building, like a fight. A secure status means no one is allowed in or out of the building if there's a danger outside the school, such as gunshots. And a full lockdown means there is a direct threat to the school. Only a full lockdown requires stopping teaching, locking doors, and sheltering in place. However, the lockdown records did not indicate which tiers were applied.
I think that breaking that apart enables us to lower the trauma that impacts on our children, not just impacts on our children, but the staff as well, and the school leaders as well. I think it's a combined community.
For Jessica, lockdowns may be nerve-wracking, but she still feels the school is the safest place for AJ.
I like to think that they have my best interests and my son's best interests at heart.
Now, the school safety expert we interviewed made the key argument. Lockdowns themselves don't have to be traumatic if schools prepare, and that's where, Claudia, you come in.
Yes, well, given the number of lockdowns the city has had, we wanted to see whether or not the city schools are actually doing the state-mandated drills.
We are in a lockdown. We are in a lockdown drill.
The Ben Salem Township Police Department, Fire Marshal, and school district officials are in the middle of their annual security drill.
They're going to go around now. The first initial sweep will be to make sure that the doors are all locked and secured.
One by one, each classroom is cleared as safe.
Good job, guys. That's the whole point of these drills, right? It's just like practice. We're preparing, to do our best.
Since 2018, all schools in Pennsylvania must complete at least one security drill each year within the first 90 days of school. This is commonly referred as a lockdown drill. The Ben Salem School District in Bucks County has 9 schools, making it easier to coordinate drills compared to larger school districts.
Every school district should make sure that they're doing them.
Philadelphia has 219 school locations in its district, and officials say making sure all of them conduct a security drill can be a challenge. But for district parent Idea Leach, it's no less important.
It's kind of scary, but that's how the world is now. So you gotta prep them. So I'd rather for them to be prepped and safe than to be served.
Her daughter is a second grader at Isaac Shepherd Elementary School in Kensington. It's one of 22 schools that, according to data obtained from the district through a public records request, did not conduct a security drill last school year. The Philly School District's head of public safety, Kevin Bethel, says some of the schools that showed up as not having completed a security drill did one, but after the school's mandated deadline.
We have 5 schools that we identified that did not complete their drills last year.
Bethel says an error report will be sent to the state correcting the data.
When did you find out about the schools not having performed the security drill?
When did I find out? I think, when you started through your inquiry.
Bethel says that with more than 200 schools in an urban setting, drill oversight may slip.
I've been dealing with kids being killed at my school, 2 homicides at my school, guns coming into my school, shootings at my school, violence at my school.
The district has not yet filed a mandatory certification with the state that certifies the number of drills done. That was due in April. That compliance ultimately falls to the superintendent. The State Department of Education is supposed to keep tabs on each district certifying that they did the drills. An official at the Department of Ed declined our numerous requests for an interview. In a statement, a department spokesperson said in part, PDE could initiate the educator discipline process if there was a situation where that was warranted, but we're not aware of that being done in the past.
I would hope the first step would be to reach out to the school district, aid them in whatever is keeping them from being able to do that, and then, and progressively move towards different types of discipline.
PA State Rep Gary Day was the main sponsor of the bill that led to the drilling mandate.
Man, I didn't think we would need legislation to tell people to do this. I thought this would be obvious.
The punishment for not completing the drills is a misdemeanor crime.
All safety team members, if available.
Back in Ben Salem, Rush Elementary Principal Joan Ritchie tells us the district plans out all of its drills before the school year starts.
It's second nature here.
Okay. And from your understanding, what would be the consequence if you didn't do one?
Oh, I don't want to find that out.
The district safety coordinator says if they miss a drill date or do a drill past deadline, she contacts the state to let it know, but insists the drills all get done.
There's no excuse for anyone not to do a safety drill, not to do a lockdown drill. There's no excuse for it.
Why not?
None. It's the safety of our children.
The Pennsylvania Department of Education tells us that the day after a story first ran, the school district filed its overdue certification. That report shows that 197 schools did the state mandated drills out of 218.
Well, thank you for that, Claudia, and thank you for joining us for the NBC 10 Investigators Dig